Балакун – міст в Україну. Приєднуйтесь до наших розмов на www.balakun.co.
A bridge to Ukraine. Join the conversation at balakun.co. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Yeah, snowy morning.
How cold is it?
It's like 5 degrees below zero.
Ooh, it never really gets that cold here. In the city where I live anyway. It snows some places in the south, but not here. This is going to be our first experiment in the world of making podcasts. Let's see how it goes. We're going to be talking about how perceptions of Ukraine have changed.
I think that the main point, why is it important, it isn't Ukraine that should be known itself, like we are the best or whatever. Not now, obviously. I mean, during all the past years. But it's mostly the representation of Ukraine from perspective of Russia, from their point of view. And as far as I know, most people knew Ukraine like part of Russia, and that's awful. And I think we'll talk about it and just break some myths or see all the scale of propaganda.
Yeah, I think so. So I thought we could start with something entertaining, just to keep it nice and light. I got that clip from Seinfeld ready. Should we start with that?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Are you sure you know what the account is? Oh, stop stalling. I can't take it. There's all this noise. Or is it because I've built a stronghold around Greenland? I've driven you out of Western Europe, and I've left you teetering on the brink of complete annihilation. I'm not big yet. I still have armies in the Ukraine. The Ukraine. You know what the Ukraine is? It's a sitting duck, a road apple. The Ukraine is weak. It's feeble. I think it's time to put the herd down in Ukraine. I come from Ukraine. You're not saying Ukraine weak. Yeah, well, we're playing a game here, pal. Ukraine is came for you. I'm gonna take the little bonus.
This was a video that someone from the chat sent when I said, what was your perception of Ukraine before and after the start of the invasion? And I've actually heard this from a couple of different people. Had you seen this before, Vit?
No.
No? Okay. So, and someone else said that.
Yeah, but I get that point. Ukraine is weak. Ukraine is not weak.
Yeah. The other thing that's a bit more subtle there is they call it the Ukraine, which might be something else you wanted to expand on.
Yeah, like the Ukraine, it's more like some part of something, and in Russian, they call it not at Ukraine or in Ukraine, but on Ukraine, like on some part of the land, on some part of their country. And it's a pity that Polish also do say this. Like they say na Ukraini the same as Russians do. And many people that have migrated there or found shelter during full-scale invasion have just explained many Polish people that this is not right, this is not correct, so it's better you don't do it. And many people just said, if you say so, okay, let it be. We'll say in Ukraine, not on Ukraine. And that's good. And it's the same as the Ukraine, like some part of something.
As though it's a province of another country, not its own country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think because most people who say that wouldn't have thought about it in that context, and they're just saying what they've heard, which is dangerous. But we need to be aware of why that's insulting.
And why is it dangerous?
And why is it dangerous? Yeah, because it means that it's a province, and it's echoing something that's probably been subtly put into our heads for a long time, that Ukraine is a province. It's the Ukraine, the part of Russia, the borderland of Russia. Okay, that's going to be our first little cut. Sorry, my
It's
dog.
okay.
My dog started barking at a dog on the pathway outside.
It wants to be the part of the podcast.
Yeah, she does. She is the biggest chatterbox I know. She does. Yeah. Would you like to hear some other thoughts people had, or did you want to keep talking about that
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
As I asked you to gather some information from
I've been
other
doing
mentors, it's really great to hear that. It's great and sad at the same time, as I'm aware that before a full-scale invasion, or even before 2014, little is known throughout the world about Ukraine.
Well, yeah, and I'd like this to be light and conversational, but it is a delicate topic because, as someone in the chat pointed out, it's such a high cost for these perceptions to change. And he didn't mean that as an insult to anyone for not knowing, but it's just sad that it's taken this for people to change their perspectives. So this is what the person said. This war is a very high price to pay for knowledge the world gains about Ukraine. I'm not criticizing anyone or anything, but it's just sad. And I think that that's very true. This is okay. So this is where the Seinfeld first came up. Well, to be honest, my primary knowledge of Ukraine before the war was from Seinfeld, when they played Risk on the subway. One of them said he'd take Ukraine because it was weak. A man, Ukrainian, heard that and got mad, uttering Ukraine is not weak before he punched the game. Hilarious, and if I may say so, that line really aged well. And today I'm getting a basic understanding about their language, know more about Ukrainian history than any other country, thanks to his student. And I'm getting a pretty detailed knowledge about their culture and geography. I guess I spend about 20 hours a week reading, listening, or interacting with Ukraine. That was from one of our mentors. I think he might be talking about Timothy Snyder.
Yeah, he did a great job for starting Ukraine, or making Ukraine popular and understanding Ukraine itself.
And making the information
he seems to have very deep understanding of what's going on and what went on during centuries. Yeah,
I think to a lot of us, maybe people in Ukraine are used to the propaganda and the mixed messages and all of the techniques, but for some of us, those are all quite new phenomenon that we're experiencing, in terms of the way propaganda tries to deliberately be unbelievable.
Yeah, and we strive in the post-imperial period yet. And it seems to me that only now is the time of the complete liberation, of complete breaking those chains of imperial background. Like, many people realize that Ukraine is great, Ukraine is good, because throughout years of independence, many people tended to listen to to Russian music, listen to watch Russian films, and all the TV shows and YouTube from Russian creators. And it was not the outside world who knew Ukraine as a part of Russia. Many of Ukraine citizens also believe that we had the common history. We are the same nation as Russian propaganda tend to claim. And I've come across yesterday, when I was on our common chat, I've come across this thing that Rebecca told about Mexican poets. And I realized that I knew too little about Mexico itself. I just know those stereotypes or superstitions even about Mexico, like Mexican food, some Mexican clothing, some that they have border with United States, and Trump wanted to build a wall that Mexicans are mostly try to break to United States illegally and find a job there, that Mexico was poor and something like that. And I realized that were superstitious.
And those are all stereotypes.
I also realized that I didn't know much about different other countries, and I don't think that it's me who doesn't know much about that. It's many people who doesn't know much about some non-popular, I can say, countries that don't have that impact in world cultural heritage. Like Italy, like France, or United Kingdom, like Britain itself, like British Empire with their Shakespeare, or Germany with their Goethe. I knew little about Mexico. I knew little about Portugal. I know where it is. I know what it's like. I know something of their language, but I know very, very little about their country. Besides, I have some people I know from Portugal, and it's okay for people from other countries that they didn't know Ukraine before 2022 or even 2014, but it's very, very harmful that they knew about Ukraine as a part of Russia. They know Russia, and they know there's something called Ukraine that is on the border of Russia or near Russia. Like there's a joke before 2022, people knew Ukraine where it is. It's near Russia, or it's a part of Russia. And after 2022, Russia, what's Russia? It's near Ukraine.
Yeah,
like the accent changed, the perspective changed.
That reminds me of
totally.
One of my thoughts when we first discussed this as a topic. I remember it was around the time of MH17, and I was watching a program called John Oliver, and he says, now let's turn to Ukraine. He said something along the lines of the country where if they're in the news, it means something terrible has happened. And it seemed really, I thought, oh, that's pretty unkind. But at the same time, it tells you a lot about who's telling the news, because you don't hear uplifting stories about lots of countries. You only hear about them when something's gone horribly wrong. So in a way it was true, but it just made me think, oh, that's a bit harsh.
Yeah. And Ukraine was becoming prominent due to our revolution. Like when Orange Revolution occurred in 2004, we won Eurovision. Like everyone supported us for having some democratic. The democracy won that time, and we had that, and we strived for democracy. That was not the first revolution, like the first one, end of 20th, in the beginning of the 21st century. It was marble revolution, like a revolution on marble, where students, that was USSR that time yet, and students on that same place, on that same square, Maidan, they went out and proclaimed their democratic mottos, and they sit on the marble for several days. The second one was 2004, and the world knew about it, and we had much support from different countries, and giving hope that democracy wins. And it was the first one, and we won Eurovision not just because of it. Ruslana made a great song while dances. It was really joyful and spectacular, I can say. Even the second revolution, was 2013, and people throughout the world watched it online, watched what terrible things happened, watched also the hope that we had, and we succeeded somehow. And in 2022, the full-scale invasion started, and it also shaked the world and shake the world's knowledge about Ukraine, and it shaked in a very, very huge amount. The statistics of Duolingo says that too many people started to learn Ukrainian from throughout the world, and Ukrainian songs became more popular than before. And it's a bit sad that revolutions or some tragedy is the thing that we are known for.
Yeah.
And not for our inventions. Like we have the first man on the in the open space. Gagarin was Russian, yeah, he was, but Korolev, the one who invented all that, was Ukrainian. He was from Zhytomyr, Zhytomyr district, the Zhytomyr region.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, and he was the one who started this thing. He he was taken to imprisoning, and yet he succeeded with all his projects. And like I say, you didn't know that. Many of people in the world didn't know that, because Russia had just
assimilated.
It's like a imperial heritage. And Sikorsky, he's also Ukrainian, the one who invented helicopter. Malevich is Ukrainian, and Russians claim that they are theirs, like a heritage empire, that they are the ancestors of Russian Empire and Soviet Empire. Like it wasn't empire itself, but it was empire, like in their heart, I can say this. And today, before we started our conversation, I've looked through. I remembered that in 2012 or 2013, I don't really remember the year, when Russia took Olympics. They made this representing video. They used their alphabet.
Yeah.
And for each letter, they put something that characterized Russia itself. And on letter V, they claimed вертолет Sikorskого, like Sikorsky helicopter. Come on, it's not yours.
Yeah,
it's not yours. He lived in Kiev. He made his research in university in Kiev, in Tactile University in Kiev. So it's not up to them to show it. And they for letter M, they used Malevich. He was Ukrainian, and some of them they were not on these alphabets, but it was Ripin. Like they claim that they are artists. He's also well known all over the world.
Yeah.
And so all that inventions and all that cultural heritage that they claim that they are theirs, they're actually ours. And we are returning to our history, returning to our heritage. This process is not that simple, but it happens. And I think that the world should know more about that.
There's actually one of the mentors made a comment about that. His response was, shamefully not much about Ukraine pre-full-scale invasion. I was always interested about the industry and technology that Ukrainians were developing in aerospace. Even if a lot of that was with the USSR, it was Ukraine doing the work. And he also goes on to say, I liked reading about the Cossacks. I think their style and independent lifestyle are iconic and well known around the world. I also like history a lot and think of the Greek colony in Odessa was pretty cool, and the Neolithic Bronze Age cultures that spread language and culture into Europe through Ukraine. People have different interests, I guess, and pick up on different things, but I thought that was quite a cool comment.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it can seem that all the heritage that Ukraine created was in the time where we were the part of Russia Empire or Soviet Empire.
Hmm.
Yet we have some great stuff nowadays that's used all over the world, like Reface app, like WhatsApp was created by Ukrainians and then sold to Facebook.
Hmm.
Like
Someone told me
Macpo,
that Grammarly.
I don't use this software like the antivirus
Okay.
to Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Grammarly was created by Ukrainians as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to summarize this by this: we can be known. No one has to know us, but we can be known, but not like the part of Russia.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be known. Our scientists and artists should not be known as Russians.
Hmm.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now after full-scale invasion, all the attention is brought to Ukraine.
Yeah. Okay, so here was an interesting one when we were talking about why these perceptions existed and why these sort of assimilation happened. I think also for a long time Soviet Russia was seen as an alternative to the viciously selfish capital system that has afflicted many Western nations. If you look at when interest in Russian culture really spread, I think it started in the 20s, where there was a huge wealth disparity in the US, and then the Great Depression. The seeds of Russian propaganda found fertile ground. And it reminds me of a quote that's something like, it's easy to be a communist in a free country, but it's not so easy to be free in a communist country. People always look at the other side as something better when you talk about capitalism and communism.
Oh, that's a great quote. And also, I've talked to the mentor, and he told me that he never visited Ukraine because everything they knew about Ukraine was that Ukraine is not safe and it's very, very corrupted. So that's what they knew about Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's very sad to realize that we are known by this. Like it's not true, actually.
Yeah.
It can be somehow, but in general, it's not true.
Well, you could say that about most countries. You know, there's areas of my city that aren't very safe as well. There's another really interesting one. This one was really long, so I'm going to chop it into bits to talk about. Later, as a history student and then teacher, the focus of my studies and teaching in this region were concerned on Russia, its expansion, acquisition of territories, the Russian Revolution, Lenin, Stalin, communism, the Red Terror. This was interesting. The Red Famine. It wasn't called Holodomor in our history books. All of this modern history of the region, it was always Russia leading the way. The only mention of Ukraine was the famine, a failed uprising or two, and the first and second Ukrainian front lines during the war against Germany. Nothing mentioned about the cultural nature of Ukraine. Why was this? Because Russia, through its Western proxies, Western academics, Western publishers, controlled the narrative and the history of the region. In hindsight, I look back at my uni education and I see the Russian narrative in the authors that we had read. Reflecting on my teaching, the UK school history syllabus spent about 6 to 8 weeks on Russia and glossed over the main narrative. Ukraine would hardly get mentioned at all. So he's obviously now knows a lot more about it and can see through that angle through which this history has been written. But until February 22, I think that many of us had this sort of impression about history and Russian culture as well.
Yeah, and all that perspective, like you said that the communists, the Stalin, Lenin, and all about Russia. All the region is about Russia. That was the main perspective of historiographical studies. And today, I don't know if it changed, but for some time ago, even after full-scale invasion, Meta and YouTube for Ukraine ran from Russia. I think that it had maybe it has already changed, or it was about to change, that they switched to Polish office.
That's
But if our content
is controlled by
YouTube, is controlled by Russia, by Russian, even if it's not non-Russian companies, but they have offices there, they can just make an influence and impact on our agenda,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
move all the content that is up to them.
Yeah, they have total control of what people are seeing. And
Yeah.
well, on a brighter note, we've got a few comments about what changed for people, and usually it's when people have met Ukrainians and begun talking to them instead of reading history books or watching the news. So I've got a good comment here. We briefly studied USSR at school, so my concept about Ukraine was very incomplete. Then I joined my job and met many Ukrainian colleagues. Slowly, I began to understand that although majority of them speak Russian, they are very different. Some began to tell me about their food, language, or cities. Then I got Ukrainian friends and they told me more things about literature. I started researching more on my own. Then war came and I kept reading about Ukraine and trying to talk with Ukrainians each day and realized that I find inspiration in Ukraine. So that was a nice comment from one of our mentors. And
It's really nice to hear that.
One of the other mentors was talking about meeting, I think this is, I don't know anything about gaming, I'm sorry, but he's talking about online gaming. Ended up in a group that has Ukrainian and Georgian players. My best friends there were from Kyiv and one in Donetsk. From then I started to learn a lot. We were talking about visiting each other, and then the war started. Now we talk outside the game about how much Russia sucks. And inside the game, I help them forget the war for a little bit. And I've been learning all I can about contemporary Ukraine and the history as well. That was another one of our mentors. Another thing that's changed for someone was reading books that break down the Russian narrative and open the way for a better understanding. Another comment here, the 2014 invasion sparked a rethink of the history, and the full invasion has pushed these voices forward even more. And it's not just Ukrainian voices. For example, it's put into focus areas like Moldova, Kazakhstan, Ichkeria, and the Russian narrative is being questioned and discarded. Unfortunately, it's still there. It had 80 years to be embedded in our society, but it's now being rebuked, along with all those Russian proxies and influencers who have been among us for so long.
It reminds me of Moses that drove
out of the Red Sea.
Yeah. For 40 years in the desert. So that generation should pass. So people forget about slavery. So there will be a new generation that is free. So we have to pass the same path, I suppose.
There's another comment here. It's been an eye-opener for me is the sheer number of people peddling the Muscovy line and the depth of penetration into so many areas of society: politics, academia, education, health, media, social media, Red Cross, WHO, Amnesty, UN, peace movements, church organizations, right-wing groups, left-wing groups, sports clubs, social clubs. It's just everywhere. And I think that's been it's been an eye-opener for me as well. You sort of had these impressions that organizations like the Red Cross and the UN are there to do good things, but you realize that they don't work the way that they should when push comes to shove. And that must be disappointing at a whole different level for people who are in Ukraine. Let's talk about representation.
Actually, we have a very huge diaspora all around the world. Very huge diaspora in Canada, in United States. Yet there are such those diaspora, as we talked about animation, there are 2 Ukrainian diaspora animators who won Oscar.
Yeah, right.
And worldwide, we are known like all the Ukrainian migrants are either they are maids or they are let me find a very slight word for this, prostitutes, or they are some maintenance workers, and not scientists, not some people of art or directors. Like it was Tatiana Munyo who shots great video clips for singers in America. And the thing that also comes up to mind, it was Mila Kunis who always claimed that she was Russian, although it was from Chernivtsi. It's in the west of Ukraine. And after full-scale invasion, she said, "Yeah, I'm from Ukraine." We had to leave because there were some anti-Jewish oppression that time. Our family, my family left, but my family is from Ukraine, so she admitted it. Why didn't she tell that she's from Ukraine in the first place? And she explained it that no one knew Ukraine at that time. It was simpler to say that you are from Russia than you're from Ukraine.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, and we have this thing among many Ukrainians, and we are strongly fighting it. It's I don't know if there's the word in English for this. It's less worthy. Like you birth less than
second-class citizen. Yeah.
Like second class citizen in your own country. Like all of the citizens are second class, and who's the first class? There's no first class, and like Ukraine itself is secondary. And this stereotype that was also forced, we were forced to believe this for many years, and this one is also represented in those Mila Kunis speech.
Yeah, it reminds me of the conversation we had about animation, about someone saying, looking back on it, there's all these subtle stereotypes that have been part of our history for so long that we just accept them, about the way Ukrainians are represented in stories, even in kids' stories, and all of those animations that we talked about.
Yeah, drinking horilka, eating dumplings, varenikas, eating lard. Yeah. And it was the only thing that was left to us. Like, why do you say that you don't have representation? You have. This is yours. Some artificial costumes that are not authentic.
Yeah,
they are they're from very, very cheap materials.
Yeah,
you can dance with on stage wearing them. You can eat your lard. You can drink your spirits. You can eat your food. Yeah, and that's your place.
Yeah, and as
What
the
about
students said, there were
science?
no
No science.
scientists,
Yeah.
no engineers, no aerospace engineers. Um,
Yeah, actually, many of them migrated, and many of them played by rules. And there's a term that Ukrainian writer Oksana Zabushka invented, ethnocide, eliticide,
okay,
like
yeah.
uh, yeah,
So it's like evolving to move up in society, sort of.
no, like you have genocide, you have ecocide, you have eliticide, like destroying the elites
I see, I see,
like this.
I
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the bad thing that many of Ukrainians hate Ukrainian literature
Mm-hmm.
because it is too many suffering in it, too much
Too much
suffering in it.
suffering.
And I think that is also some wrong impact
Mm-hmm.
because me myself, when I studied at school, I hated Ukrainian literature because everything was about the countryside. It was about those farmers,
Mm-hmm.
about some sufferings, about somebody died, somebody cried, and everything about it. That amount of books that are taught at school.
There's
And
a
after
sense
that,
of
in university, I just
stopped
get
reading.
acquainted with the real Ukrainian literature, and it was great. It was
Yeah.
very great. And I think that's that you say that why don't we finish with something funny, with something positive, or something that gives hope?
Yeah. Well,
Like our literature is known for its suffering, and we just talked about this suffering. That's awful,
yeah,
actually.
but there's a certain sense of I don't claim to be an expert in any sense, but I've read a couple of books by Andrew Kokov, and Death and the Penguin. There's plenty of suffering, but it's very funny. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've read
yeah.
that one. It's one of
Yeah, and the humor actually is the second sense of humor is the second thing that is stereotypical Ukrainian.
Mhm.
Like throughout all the period of full-scale invasion, almost 2 years,
Yeah.
uh, we have memes to every
Yeah.
what to everything that happens.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of them for, and the Russians they ask this question, why do they laugh? So they don't understand that
Yeah. You
they
can laugh or
are
you can
making
cry.
damage to us, and we are just laughing.
Yeah. It's not everyone's different though. I learned I used to try to tell people in Ukraine jokes if it was a bad day, and sometimes they're just like, I'm not in the mood. You have to be careful about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing that despite everything,
Yeah.
we use our will to life.
Mm-hmm.
We use our potential, and we can really restore our heritage, our history, return it back, even and for sure produce new one.
Well, I think that it's quite clear that perceptions have changed, certainly from the people in people in our chat.
For sure.
But I hope it's uplifting to see that this, even though it's at a huge cost, that people's perceptions are changing.